Hi folks, welcome back to 3 Minute Tales. This is the Shebeen and I'm your storyteller Shanna Key. Now today's story documents one of the darkest days in Irish history, Bloody Sunday. It happened in November 1920. If you are aware of this story or whether you've never heard about it before, I encourage you to watch it. It really is a tragic tale. So please sit back, enjoy. If you like the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to leave a comment, you can do so down below. And as I keep asking, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do so. It costs nothing but means so much to us. So until the next time, thanks so much for your time. I'm Shanna Key. It was the morning of Sunday, November the 21st, 1920, in a large tenement building on Blessington Street in Dublin. 10-year-old Jerome O'Leary had just woken from a fitful sleep. The excitement of attending what had been billed as the Great Challenge match, a football match between Jerome's beloved football team Dublin and rival county team Tipperary, had kept the young boy awake most of the night. It was the first time that he would attend such a high-profile game, all courtesy of a ticket that had been given to him as a gift from his uncle. The Gaelic Athletic Association, who were hosting the game, had pledged that all proceeds from the football match were to be donated to the Republican Prisoners Dependence Fund to financially assist the families of jailed or executed Irish patriots. Meanwhile, a half a mile away on Little Britain Street, another young boy, 11-year-old William Robinson, was also excited about attending the football match. William, however, hadn't been so lucky. He had no ticket for the game, but planned to watch the match from the lofty perch of one of the high trees outside the stadium that he'd used on many occasions beforehand. As the two boys prepared themselves for the exciting day ahead of them, mayhem had taken over the streets of Dublin. Gunshots rang out and the screams and wailing of injured and dying men broke the early morning silence. 19 members of the Cairo Gang, a group of British intelligence officers who had been sent to Dublin to spy and ultimately assassinate top IRA members, had been ambushed at various locations around Dublin City. 14 of the men were killed, with one man, Colonel Hugh Montgomery, dying a month later, bringing the total fatalities to 15. The Cairo Gang had been given their name due to their patronage of Café Cairo on Dublin's Grafton Street, had been assembled to combat IRA insurgency in Ireland. This group of British officers had been living and working in Dublin, gathering information on various IRA members. But counterintelligence by Republicans using the same means had resulted in vital information on personal details, routine and the whereabouts of the British officers being passed on to them. At 9 a.m. in the morning, under the leadership of Republican leader Captain Michael Collins, the ambushes were planned to coincide with the Gaelic football match later that day. The plan was for IRA assassins to blend in with large crowds of unsuspecting football fans and to remain anonymous. At precisely 9 a.m, coordinated units of Republicans ambushed the men at properties on Upper Pembroke Street, Upper and Lower Mount Street, Northumberland Road, Lower Baggot Street, Earlsford Terrace and a hotel room at one of Dublin's most prestigious hotels, the Gresham, on Sackville Street. The killing of the British officers was carried out with not only lightning speed, but with brutal and calculated precision. Within hours of the shooting, Dublin was awash with news headlines, hot off the press, detailing the morning's grisly events. Meanwhile in Dublin Castle, the headquarters of British police and intelligence, plans were being hastily put into place to apprehend and arrest the culprits responsible. Suspecting that some of the Republican gunmen may attend the football match, a convoy of troops was mobilised and drove into Dublin from the north before stopping at Clonliffe Road in Drumcondra to coordinate a raid on the football match. The convoy consisted of 12 trucks of black and tans up front, 3 armoured cars and a further 6 trucks containing Royal Irish Constabulary auxiliaries behind them. Their orders were to surround Croke Park, guard all exits and search every male leaving the stadium after announcing the cessation of the game over megaphones. As the heavy vehicles loudly trundled through the cobbled streets of Dublin, onlookers watched in horror as the heavily armed troops made their way to Croke Park. On Blessington Street, Jerome O'Leary's mother smiled as she handed her beloved son a short wooden stick that had a small handmade light blue coloured bunting flag to wave in support of the Dublin team. His heart was beating like a drum with excitement as he waved goodbye to his mother. The streets surrounding Croke Park were thronged with football fans as they eagerly made their way to the football pitch. As the fans crammed into the stadium, the convoy of trucks and armoured cars advanced through the streets of Dublin. Tempers were running high among the British troops who were seeking revenge for their fallen comrades. Inside the stadium, the football match finally got off to the excited cheers of the crowds. The rivalry between the two opposing teams was fierce, and the game began at a frantic pace. Standing near the canal end goal, Jerome O'Leary waved his flag and cheered, but standing behind so many adults, his view was blocked and he was unable to see the action. Noticing the child, Dublin man Jerry Flynn lifted tiny Jerome up and sat him on the high wall behind them. Now with an unobscured view of the game, Jerome's eyes lit up with excitement. He cheered loudly and continued to wave his small blue flag. Outside, perched in a high tree near Canal Bridge, was William Robinson. The young 11-year-old's climb into the tree had secured him the perfect vantage point to watch the game. As he watched the Dublin players advance towards the Tipperary goal, his attention was diverted by the sound of men shouting and the grinding of brakes of an armoured car. A truck carrying Black of Tans and RIC auxiliaries screeched to a halt, and William watched with confusion as the heavily armed troops ran down the narrow passage to the canal end turnstiles. As they forced their way into the stadium, the Black and Tans began to fire into the crowd with rifles and revolvers. Frozen with fear by the sound of gunfire, William held on for dear life. As he watched the terror unfold, a bullet ripped through his shoulder and chest, knocking him from the tree. Confusion and panic ensued as the fans watched in horror as soldiers ran onto the pitch shooting indiscriminately. As the football players ran for cover, 24-year-old Tipperary player Michael Hogan was shot in the back. He fell and tried to crawl to safety but died within minutes on the cold, damp grass of the football pitch. In a frantic bid to escape the carnage, fans began to scramble over the canal end wall and fled in every direction. As the troops continued to shoot chaotically into the fleeing crowd, a Black and Tan soldier took aim and shot a terrified Jerome O'Leary in the forehead, killing the child instantly. His tiny, lifeless body fell backwards and landed on the ground behind the canal end wall. Troops outside the stadium also began to shoot at the fans as they attempted to flee. An armoured car parked on Clonliffe Road shot over the heads of the fleeing crowds with a machine gun in an attempt to stop them escaping. In the space of just over a minute and a half, a total of 14 people had been killed, with a further 80 people suffering serious injuries. Outside the stadium, ticket seller Thomas Doyle found a critically injured William Robinson at the base of the 40-foot high oak tree. Thomas carried the child to safety, and as he did so, young William uttered his last words, "Take me to my mother." From there he was transported to Drumcondra Hospital, where he passed away in the arms of his mother the following day. On Blessington Street, the family of little Jerome O'Leary learned of the attack from a neighbour. His devastated mother rushed to the nearby hospital in a vain attempt to locate her missing son. Soon after, she was ushered to the hospital's mortuary to identify the body of a young boy. But due to the extent of the child's horrific injuries, she could only positively identify him as her son by his blood-soaked clothes and the small flagstick that was still firmly in the grasp of his tiny hand. Of the 14 people who perished in Croke Park, 12 had died from gunshot wounds and a further 2 people died from crush injuries in the stampede to escape the massacre. Among the dead was the only woman to die in the attack. 26-year-old shop worker Jane Boyle was due to be married the following Friday, but instead was laid to rest in her wedding gown 3 days later. All 14 victims of the massacre were laid to rest within days, including the 2 little boys who would never grow old. Some of the soldiers later claimed that they were fired on first, allegedly by IRA sentries outside Croke Park, but other soldiers at the front of the convoy did not corroborate this. Civilian witnesses all agreed that the RIC had opened fire without provocation as they ran into the grounds. The British commander, Major Edward Mills, later stated that some of his troops were excited and out of hand. An official press release was issued by Dublin Castle that said the British troops had intended to arrest the perpetrators of the early morning assassinations inside Croke Park, but IRA warning shots had caused a stampede that escalated the situation. 100 years after the attack, the GAA commemorated the victims and erected new headstones for 3 of the victims who up until then had been buried in unmarked graves. The victims were Patrick O'Dowd, Michael Feary and little Jerome O'Leary. May they all rest in peace.